Greetings everyone, and welcome to SpaceWeek Live, episode 120 for this Sunday, May 29th, 2022. Sorry for the slightly late start. I was just squaring away one of my video clips that I'm going to show you later. So, yes, welcome. So let's get right into it. Taking a look at the last week. Last Wednesday, Boeing's Starliner undocked from the space station after a short 4.5-day stay. Starliner was, of course, wrapping up its Orbital Flight Test 2, or OFT-2, which was the final uncrewed flight required for NASA to certify it for human spaceflight. On board Starliner were a mannequin named Rosie the Rocketeer, wearing Boeing's very blue new astronaut flight suit, a plush Jebediah Kerman from Kerbal Space Program, and various scientific experiments to be returned to Earth for analysis. After undocking, Boeing test-fired the two Orbital Maneuvering and Attitude Control, or OMAC, thrusters that had failed during the orbit insertion burn the previous week. They determined that the engines were producing only about 25% of the expected thrust. 3.5 hours after undocking, Starliner executed its deorbit burn. The two bad thrusters were disabled for the burn, but this didn't pose a problem for deorbit because Starliner has numerous other thrusters it can use. Oddly, the total number of OMAC thrusters is reported differently by different news outlets. The Washington Post said that Starliner has 12 OMAC engines. Spaceflight Now said that it has 20. And NASA said that it has 24, though that was an old article from 2013. And I thought that I had remembered them saying that they had 12 from the live stream, but I would have to go back and watch it to confirm, which I don't have time to do right now. Regardless of the exact number, there is enough redundancy that the two flaky engines didn't pose a problem for this flight, though they do pose a concern for the future if they can't get the thruster issues resolved. So 44 minutes after the deorbit burn, Starliner's velocity was reduced from 17,500 miles per hour to 0 as it landed successfully at White Sands Space Harbor in New Mexico. Here we see it streaking down through the atmosphere. This is an infrared view from NASA's high altitude tracking plane. And here we have the drogue parachute deployment.
And the forward heat shield has now jettisoned. That heat shield protected the spacecraft through those thermal loads during re-entry. And drogues are out.
2 drogue parachutes slowing Starliner's speed and drag. They're going to reef to a wider opening and slow Starliner down enough for the main chutes to deploy in less than a minute.
Jumping ahead to those mains deployment, another infrared view.
View here from the ground tracker.
And mains are now out. We see 3 parachutes coming out here. Starliner has another 8,000 feet toward the landing. Those 3 parachutes.
So you may recall that in one of Boeing's parachute tests a few years ago, actually, what was it, 3 or 4 years ago, only 2 of the 3 main parachutes deployed, and it was still able to land acceptably. NASA actually accepted that test, but Boeing does have some challenges with their thrusters, with their parachute system, and hopefully they can get those ironed out before they actually send humans on board. Fast forwarding a couple of minutes to the landing.
Continuing to see views from the ground trackers on site in New Mexico. Just seconds left.
You can see the mountains coming into frame there. We're getting very close to the ground. And touchdown, Starliner. We're touching down in the desert of New Mexico, marking the completion of Orbital Flight Test 2.
So Starliner is the only spacecraft in the world that lands on an airbag. So Soyuz, when it comes down, fires a burst of compressed gas to cushion the landing. Blue Origin's New Shepard capsule does the same. It fires a burst of compressed gas. SpaceX Crew Dragon, of course, comes down on parachutes and splashes down in the ocean. There were originally plans to use the Crew Dragon's Super Draco engines for a propulsive landing, but that was not given the okay by NASA, and so they opted for a water landing instead. But Boeing Starliner is the only spacecraft that actually comes down on parachutes and then deploys airbags beneath the craft to cushion the landing. So that's an interesting design feature. And here's another view of the landing in color, because during the live stream we only saw the infrared view, but here's a color one with the audio muted for copyright reasons, because this is from Boeing's highlight reel. Boop. And unfortunately the camera crew, everybody in the trucks were just far enough away that we didn't actually see the touchdown. It was they were a couple miles away, and it was just over the visible horizon, lost in the mirage there. But so congratulations, Boeing finally completed their final uncrewed flight test, and they are now certified for human spaceflight. The next Starliner launch should be with a live human crew, and that might launch in December. Of course, dates and times are highly variable, and so we'll see if there are any delays cascading from the challenges that were experienced during this mission. But for now, it is tentatively scheduled for December. And also last Tuesday, SpaceX launched the Transporter 5 rideshare mission from Cape Canaveral in Florida. Let's check it out.
T-minus 15 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition and liftoff.
M1D chamber pressure is nominal. Vehicles reaching downrange.
So you may notice on the timeline there, you see a boost back event on that curved timeline. Whenever you see a boost back, that means it is coming back for a pad landing. Landings on the drone ship do not require a boost back burn because they just arc ballistically off out into the ocean where they land on the drone ship, but pad landing involves a boost back burn. So let's go ahead and fast forward, if we would, to the okay, this is the entry burn, and here.
Once we get through the clouds, you should have a pretty clear view of the Space Coast with LZ-1, which is our targeted destination. Falcon 9 has 4 landing legs made of carbon fiber with aluminum honeycomb.
Terminal guidance.
They are placed
Stage 1 transonic.
They're placed symmetrically around the base of the rocket, and they deploy just prior to landing, as we'll see momentarily.
Stage 1 landing burn.
All right, you can see that that landing burn has begun just before Falcon 9 lands. We're expecting the shutdown of the MVAC second stage. Just after landing, one of our 59 spacecraft that will not separate from the vehicle will activate, and you should hear that call out over the nets. Let's listen in for these activities happening in quick sequential order.
Stage 1 landing leg deploy. MVAC shutdown. Stage 1 landing.
And successful landing on the pad. Always fun to see a pad landing. They seem to have a wasp problem there. There were wasps or some sort of flying... They look like wasps. Oh my gosh. Flying insects buzzing around the cameras, both at the pad and on one of the mast cameras, the cameras overlooking the launch pad. But yeah, so good job, SpaceX. And our very own friend Sven from the Ukraine had a spacecraft aboard that flight. So congratulations to Sven. That is very cool. You too could purchase your own spacecraft for our satellite for deployment on one of these transporter missions, or maybe on Electron if that's your preference. But the cost has come down to the point where ordinary people can actually afford small satellite deployments, which is very neat. So, taking a look back at space history, let's see. This Monday marks 2 whole years since the launch of SpaceX Demo 2 on May 30th, 2020, the first crewed orbital spaceflight on a commercial spacecraft. On board the Crew Dragon Endeavour were Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley, who spent almost 64 days aboard the International Space Station. This Friday will mark the 57th anniversary of the first U.S. spacewalk by astronaut Ed White on June 3rd, 1965, during the Gemini 4 mission, or Gemini, if you prefer that pronunciation. White spent a whole 20 minutes outside the spacecraft. Now, the first ever spacewalk was done just 3 months earlier by Soviet cosmonaut Alexei Leonov. Ed White went on to work in the Apollo program, but tragically lost his life on January 27, 1967, along with Gus Grissom and Roger Chaffee, when a fire broke out in their Apollo 1 crew capsule during a launch rehearsal test. So, looking ahead to this week, on Tuesday, May 31st, at 9:30 a.m. Eastern, 13:30 UTC, we have the scheduled launch of New Shepard NS-21, a suborbital rocket with a crew of 6 paying customers. Now, this is Jeff Bezos' company. I'm sorry, Jeff Bezos. I don't know why I want to say Bezos, because I have training in Spanish, but for some reason I just want to say Bezos, but that's not correct. Anyway, crew members will include Evan Dick on his second flight aboard New Shepard, Katia Echazarreta, who will become the first Mexican-born woman and the youngest American woman to fly to space, Hamish Harding, Jason Robinson, Victor Vescovo, and Brazilian Victor Correa Hispanja. This flight was supposed to take place on May 20th, but it was delayed due to, according to Blue Origin, one of New Shepard's backup systems not meeting expectations for performance. So if it does launch on the 31st, then you will get to see it right here on Raw Space, as I provide live streams of these sorts of things. On Friday, June 3rd, at 5:32 a.m. Eastern, 09:32 UTC, is the launch of a Soyuz rocket from Baikonur Cosmodrome with the Progress 81P cargo mission to the space station. A scant 3 hours after launch, it arrives and docks at the space station, so that docking coverage will begin at 8:15 a.m. Eastern, 12:15 UTC, with the docking about 48 minutes after. Then and again, both of those streams will be available right here on Raw Space. And then on Saturday, June 4th, at 8 p.m. Eastern, or midnight UTC on the 5th, is the launch of a Chinese Long March 2 with the Shenzhou 14 mission, or satellite rather, and there will not be live coverage of that one, as is the norm for any Chinese launch that is not at Wenchang. So that's actually it for the next week. I want to take a moment to thank our channel members who continue to support the channel and this content, both these weekly summaries as well as the live streams and the assorted other videos that I produce. Thank you all for your continued support. Let me get to your questions. What do we have today? All right. I hope you tagged my name. I didn't mention it in the beginning, but hopefully somebody else did. If you did not tag my name, Raw Space, chances are that we will not see your questions in order to answer them. So, Rockin' Robbins 13, NASA Safety Advisory Board has concerns about this Starliner flight and recommends another unmanned flight. That's interesting. That would be met with a lot of frowns at Boeing, I imagine, because they already ate the cost of this OFT-2, which was a second unplanned, unmanned, or uncrewed flight. Originally, there was only supposed to be one uncrewed flight, but they had major issues with the first one. And this second one, although it did complete all of its mission objectives, there were some challenges along the way. And so it wouldn't surprise me if the Safety Advisory Board did want another unmanned flight, but I'm sure the folks at Boeing are grumbling about that one. But tough noogies, you got to be safe before you put humans on board. Turns out a total of 4 maneuvering thrusters, plus the 2 failed thrusters, had issues. So I guess there were a total of 4 errant thrusters, or four total thrusters that failed. That's rather alarming, and I would definitely, if I were part of this, if I were a member of the safety advisory board, I would have some serious concerns about that outcome. All right. And Rockin' Robbins also says they especially mentioned Boeing's way too low staffing levels on the project. That's worrying. So I don't know much about Boeing staffing compared with SpaceX or compared with NASA, but yeah, if you don't have enough people working the issue or working the program, then you can't get you don't have as much flexibility, responsiveness. You can't react to issues in a timely manner and get problems resolved and have sort of redundant brain power. And apparently the Safety Advisory Committee is also unhappy about the parachutes. So the parachutes appeared to deploy successfully with no problems this time. So I'm not sure. I would have to poke around and see either a summary or their like meeting minutes or publication, whatever, to see what it is that they don't like about the Boeing parachutes. But Yazata says, hi, Raw Space. Hello, Yazata. Let's see. All right. MVM Motovlog Music. Any news about when James Webb will be fully checked out? So let me just take a quick gander at the James Webb Space Telescope website. So let me show you what I'm seeing here. Webb Telescope. Webb is commissioning its instruments. All right. So track Webb. Let's see. Instrument commissioning. Blog. What's the latest blog entry? Continues to work on commissioning science instruments. This was released May 26th, just 3 days ago, as of today. The final step before starting science operations in the summer. They mentioned the black hole, Sagittarius A star at the center of the Milky Way, which was recently, the very famous image was recently released by the Event Horizon telescope team. So, yeah, so I don't have a date for you, but summertime, soon, the Webb telescope will actually be fully commissioned and in operation mode, and they'll begin collecting production scientific data and images. Of course, those need to be processed and analyzed before they're released to the public. They don't just come straight off the telescope ready to view, like like the images we get of from weather satellites. But yeah, so maybe in a couple of months we'll see some initial results from the James Webb. All right, caught up with that. Let me see if we have any more questions. A very what's it, pragmatic, cynical, whatever the word is. Peter S. says fewer workers equals larger management salaries. So sometimes that is true. Julian Roberts asks, Raw Space, are you covering the Artemis second wet dress rehearsal, and will it be 24-hour coverage until conclusion? So typically the live events that I provide live streams of, are the ones that are announced ahead of time by the major players, by NASA, SpaceX, ULA, Boeing, Blue Origin, ISRO, Roscosmos, etc. If I am aware of a live stream ahead of time, then I usually provide, unless it's just a press conference or something, in which case I usually skip those. But if it's an actual, there's something to see sort of event, I usually provide a live stream of it. So if NASA will be streaming the Artemis wet dress rehearsal on NASA TV, then I will probably have a copy of it for you here on Raw Space. I do not have cameras on site like some other channels do. They actually have the budget and the manpower to, or the human power to set up cameras and to send personnel all over the country, to California, to Texas, to Florida, to Alaska, to cover these launches with their own cameras. Well, I can't do that. Maybe someday, but probably not, because those other channels kind of already have that covered, and I can't really compete with that. But yes, if there's a live feed from an official source like NASA, then I will have a copy of it for you here. And if it's not on NASA TV, then I will definitely need a heads up as to where it is located, because I only have limited time and resources, with which to hunt around for things. Like the Chinese launches, I can never seem to find a good live stream of those. They exist sometimes, especially for the Wenchang launches, but if I don't get like an actual video link from someone, the chances of me finding it are slim. So it's kind of like the balloon test, the recent, what was it, Wallops, NASA Wallops balloon launch test that they did. I had no idea where that live stream was. I heard there was one, but I couldn't find it anywhere. Like I looked on the Wallops page, on the NASA page, but in any case, and that's why it's very helpful to have people give me a heads up about these things, so that I can throw up a live stream even on short notice, and continue the work of aggregating space content for y'all, my dear viewers. Okay, so Aaron Berg says, anything worth talking about the new Chinese space telescope? I actually don't know anything about a new Chinese space telescope. There's not usually a whole lot of news that comes out of China. Basically, we get launch schedules and video after the fact, but as far as a new telescope, I'm not sure. So I would have to look that up. If you have an article or something, feel free to go over to Discord. Oh yeah, Chris just linked Discord. Feel free to post the link over in Discord in the Space News section or wherever, and that way we can all learn about it. Aaron Berg says Shunqian, or CSST, is the name of it. I believe that Shunqian would be the right pronunciation-ish. Marina Repan, or Repan, do they think of making bigger modules for Gateway, the LOPG, or the Lunar Orbiting Platform Gateway, which would be brought to the moon orbit by Starship? So I'm never really clear on the current status of the Gateway project. I mean, that is happening in the background, but we don't see a lot of news releases about it. Now, I think that the first Gateway component will be launched later this year, the first module. But as far as launching by Starship, Starship is still very much in development. And, you know, until now, even though Starship was chosen, or rather the lunar Starship was chosen as the human landing system component for the Artemis missions, which will go from the Gateway to the lunar surface. Starship is still in development, has not yet had an orbital flight test because of a long sequence of delays for the FAA's, or the environmental assessment for the launch site in Boca Chica. And but until that orbital flight test happens, and they're able to conduct that successfully, I mean, I'm rooting for Starship as much as the next person, but I mean, it's got to actually launch in order to be used for missions. So I don't know of any plans to tailor modules specifically for the larger payload capacity of Starship, but that is possible. If that's been discussed, I wouldn't be privy to those conversations, though. And Rayan Zakraoui says, please, Starship launch day. Absolutely. When Starship does launch, I will do my absolute best to have a live stream of it for you here. And that'll be, that's a given. But so Rayan also asks about the Mars mission. So there's a number of Mars missions. Recently, a couple of weeks ago, the Mars InSight team announced that now if you recall, InSight was the lander, not rover, but the lander that has been at Mars for, 3 years now? 3.5 years, something like that. And it has a drill on board that was supposed to drill down into the crust of Mars a couple of meters and detect the seismology of that planet. And that drill had some issues. The soil was uncooperative. It got stuck and was unable to drill down very far. And so the Mars InSight team a couple of weeks ago made an announcement that not only had they detected many small earthquakes on Mars, or Mars quakes, I guess they would be. Let's just call them quakes on Mars. But their solar panels were so full of dust that they were going to have to, they didn't have enough power to continue with full mission operations, and they were going to have to retire the mast cam. And so in late April, they had collected the images for the very last selfie of the InSight lander, which is a series of photos taken from the mast cam. The mast cam, raises up, and then the camera moves around and takes pictures of the craft. So that's actually the last selfie we'll see of InSight. And then they put the robotic arm into a stowed or hibernation position, where it will likely never be used again. And so no more mast cam images from InSight, but they will conduct whatever operations they can with the power that's available, but being unable to clear off the Martian dust from the solar panels means that they just aren't going to have enough power to continue for much longer. And Marina is eagerly awaiting that FAA approval for their environmental assessment of SpaceX's launch facility in Texas. We sure hope so. If they come back with a big thumbs down, that's going to be a problem. That's going to be a challenge. All right, so Rayan is asking about who's the best. I don't like to talk in terms of best. I mean, every player in the space field, you know, Boeing and SpaceX and NASA and Blue Origin, et cetera, ULA, they all serve a function, serve multiple functions, and you know, they all have roles to play. And I wish all of the players in the space, in the peaceful space sector, you know, success in their endeavors and their missions and their launches. So, you know, SpaceX does amazing things, but Blue Origin has also done amazing things, and ULA has exceptionally reliable launch systems. And you know, ISRO does, which is the Indian Space Agency, does some incredible stuff with a limited budget. They've experienced great success. You know, Roscosmos, very reliable launch systems. The Soyuz, even when it fails, it succeeds, or rather, it fails successfully, as we saw a few years ago during the MS-10 launch, when one of the jettisoning of the side boosters was off nominal, one could say, and sent the upper stage tumbling, but they still recovered the cosmonauts and astronaut, you know, just fine. A little roughed up, but so yeah, everybody has a role to play, and I don't see any of them as better than another. They all do their own thing. But yeah, and Rocket Labs, of course, too. Thank you, MVM, for that. All right, so I think that'll wrap it up for this week. Thank you all for coming, and it was a kind of a short and sweet session, but you know, we don't always have a whole pantheon of launches to go over, and that's okay. But until next time, keep it raw, and I hope to see you in the next live stream. Bye for now.